All right, last time we worked on this facade, and as you can see, it turned out perfect. We're going to continue this all the way through, but I thought it would be rather boring for me to do that. Instead, I'm going to show you how to do lawn work. And I have a different approach to lawn work as opposed to most. I call it organized chaos. The grass that is closer to the person observing it is going to be a little bit more identifiable, a little bit larger. The lawn that's further back, even though it's further back, is still going to be individual also. So we're going to do a whole section of it. And it's going to be interesting. I don't like to have the lawn or each blade of grass close up. I think it should be they shouldn't meet. It's two lines, and because they're further back, they're going to be shorter. And I don't like having them all uniform. It's not a parade. They're not going to be all standing up perfect. There's going to be a little wave action. They're not all going to be standing up perfect. Going to be a little bend here and there. End result is it's going to look like a full piece of lawn. The organized chaos is, even though it's all a group of individual pieces of grass, all going their own which way, basically going vertically, but with a slight variation. They're not all standing next to each other. There's a little bit of wave. The end result is they form a pattern. And that pattern is lawn. And yet they're all individual. They're not really interlocked, but they're hidden in such a way that you can't see from whence they come. I love that effect. Like your average lawn. Like your average head of hair. Like your average beard. Like your average. There's so many things where organized chaos is a great way of describing nature. I don't like to have the hairs actually meet, because let's face it, can you actually see the end of a blade of grass? Can you really see where the end is? Isn't it more interesting if you don't have them meet? I think it's more fun. I never could see the end of a hair. My eyes are not that good. I'd rather imagine that somewhere along the line they will meet, and that's more fun. So here we go. We got a whole section of lawn down. They don't all come straight up. There's a little bit of a play there. I love that effect. It's a little bit more challenging. It's not easy. I've been trying to teach kids, I treat adults, everybody, for years how to do this. And everybody has their own little way of doing it. It's amazing. It's kind of fun to watch. And I'll tell you something. I've taught so many people over the years. I've showed this technique to so many people. At first they're infuriated, but they never forget. I had one student come back to me years later, and she's still doing hair this way. They never forget this technique. They might put their own spin on it, but they never ever forget this technique. It's a good technique for doing hair. And let's face it, when you're doing something like that, I call it follicles. It's nice not to have them all meet. It's nice to have this interaction. It's a way to learn how to do something. And let's face it, most people are very challenged by hair, trees, grass. To the extent that they won't even do it, they'll simply just jump over it. But if you have a technique for doing it, you tend not to worry about it as much. Now the trick is too, once it's out further, closer to you, you can make the hairs thicker, bigger, and again, don't try to get them going in one direction. The wind can affect it. Every lawn, if you ever see the wind blow it, you'll see that they do move. It's like a wave of grass. And that to me is a lawn. Now, where the walkway is, I'm actually going to draw a line there, because the grass tends not to go over that one. So it's okay to put a definitive line here. I might actually have a broken rule here and keep it solid right there, all the way to where the sidewalk meets the other end. The trick here is have the grass start at the very edge. Don't make it too perfect. No lawn is perfect. The minute you make it perfect, you're ruining the effect. Now here we go. We're going to have it grow right at the very edge of the sidewalk. On the other end, on the corresponding side of the sidewalk, the grass will grow over the edge. You won't be able to see the edge so well. But we will try to get as much of the grass in there. And notice the very aspect of it being wild, not growing straight up, a little bit of variance, just a little bit of play. The wind might play with it. It's fun. I like the idea of double lines too. Don't make grass into one single line. I don't buy it. It doesn't give you the opportunity to put shading in. You can always put shading by putting a little bit of stipple, or if you want, you put a little cross hatch in there. But the minute you make it a single line, you're losing that option. So I'd rather do this. I'd rather do a double line, double follicle, what have you. It's much more fun. It gives you an option. That's why I don't like people who draw hair with a single line. I'd like to think that hair is two lines, the inside of the hair and the outside of the hair. And inside that double line, you could put stipple, you could put crosshatch, what have you. But the minute you reduce it to one set of lines, just one line, you're cutting your artistic throat. Notice I don't keep this all in one set of lines. Grass doesn't grow in a row. It grows wild in that sense. So by no means are you going to draw a row upon a row upon a row. It's not a parade. Now, later on, when you're all set and done, if you want to, you can put a little bit of crosshatch the further back it is. That might be fun. Some people, whether or not they're anal enough, will actually put a lot of stipple there. I don't think I'd put stipple in there. I think I'd rather just, if I wanted to, I could put a little crosshatch in there. A lot easier on the nerves. See how nice that blends? You can't even tell from whence each blade comes, because they're all cascading upon each other. That's what I like about it. If you do grass this way, double follicle, not single, you run that beautiful effect of each blade of grass resting on top of each other. That's the way I see it. When I look at a lawn, I don't see individual lines. I see two sets of line, and not all perfectly straight up. Kind of a pattern where each grass interweaves, forms a bed of grass, what have you. If you do two lines like I'm doing here, it just opens the possibilities. Now on the other side of the lawn, the one that actually rises above the sidewalk, you are going to have some grass actually go over the side. That is the way it is. In nature, you don't always see both sides of the sidewalk. You could do this. You could actually draw a broken line there. And I like that idea. So we're going to draw a broken line. So you can see parts of the sidewalk indeed exist. And when you have that broken line, where that happens, I'm going to take some lines of grass and have some of that grass go over the edge of that line. And what you're doing is you're actually showing that yes, indeed, there is a sidewalk there, but some of the grass has managed to obscure your vision enough that you can't see where the sidewalk really is. You have parts of it that do indeed come and are covered by the grass. It's a nice effect. I just gave you a really big little bit of information. A lot of people who do drawing always have to sit back and think, how does he do that? Well, I just gave you a nice little effort right there. So you have some of the grass popping over the edge. And you didn't have to sit there and analyze each one. I just gave you a nice little technique. Now, you're going to take some of the grass. Remember, these are closer to you. You, the viewer, have that option there, closer. You're going to make some of these blades bigger because you're on this side of the drawing. And that way you can actually make some of these petals of grass bigger. And again, they are resting on top of each other. Now, I'm sure the landscaper, does a good job of making sure there's no dandelions. So it wouldn't be a good idea to put one or two in there. It's a nice effect, though. But I'm sure the landscaper would kill me if I did that. So no dandelions, no weeds, no nothing. I love that effect so far. Very good. Now, in an area like this, for the same reason, you really can't have too much grass going over that window. What you're going to do instead is just simply initiate the fact that there is grass growing there. And again, you're on the far side of this. You're not going to see as much of the grass because this is further away. When you get to this point here, you could put a couple of a larger scale. Where I broke that line, you could put a couple petals of grass going over. We're going to make some of these larger for the same reason I mentioned. Going to keep that basic wind-blown effect. You could actually save the angle and have a few going the opposite way. It is a lawn. The wind has a lot more to say about it than you do, the artist. Kind of a nice effect too. It does really say volumes about lawns. And if we're putting so much detail into the building, for God's sakes, you have to use the same amount of detail in the lawn. Otherwise it looks really obscene. Doesn't make sense. Now, I drew in some lawn work when I first did the drawing. It's going to be up to me now to blend in my new lawn with the other stuff I drew, just to make it look pertinent. And so we're going to take the new sod and blend it with the old. I could really be persnickety and put in information about sidewalks. Like, for instance, each sidewalk is usually put in segments, and just to make it look like a sidewalk, we could actually look at the picture. Actually, I don't see too many breakages, so I think I'd be best not doing that. Now, I'm going to do the rest of this lawn in a similar fashion. I like the way that's turning out. We actually could put more small bits of lawn all the way to where the trees are. Otherwise, you run the risk of having people believe that the lawn is dying over there, what have you. We don't want that to be an idea a false idea that people would normally think of. So what we're going to do instead is draw grass all the way to the trees. Nice effect. Alright, we said we're going to make some of these blades larger, and that's what we're going to do. The further out we are, and you know the good thing too is you don't have to draw as many out here. If you're going to draw large ones, by no means do you have to make them as full. The funny thing about your eye, it'll pick up individual blades the closer you are to it. It still will make it look like a full lawn. It's just that your eye only picks up certain blades. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to actually show that. Again, I drew some initially, so now we're going to put in individual pieces of lawn to match what I drew probably a day or two ago. That's a great thing about pen ink. You can always go back to what you did and assimilate new stuff with old. And if you're good, it'll look fine. Again, I love the fact that it looks like a head of hair. The same technique will work with hair. I use it many times. I love this idea of drawing individual little double follicles, I call them. Grass, same thing. Hair and grass, and it doesn't matter if it's an animal. It might be a different type of hair, but for the most part, be surprised this effect will work in anything. And I don't think any landscaper would mind lawns done this way. It actually lends itself very nicely. Alright, I think the next time we meet, I'm going to be working, I'm probably going to try to have as much of it done as possible on my own. We're going to actually try to work on the new sections. And again, I love when old architecture meets new. And that's what we have here. We have a case of two types of architecture being melded into one. And I love that effect. I think old architecture should not be destroyed. I think it should be enhanced. And the combination of the two is great. By all means, we should not destroy what we have. If we want it, we should add to it. I love it. Too many of our old buildings are compromised to the point where they would rather destroy them, or I think it's wrong. There's so many beautiful structures that are just leveled. I love when an old building is kept alive and just added to. It says more about our culture or civilization when we tend to want to keep the old. Now, I don't mean that about old factories. I'm talking about beautiful old buildings. Our lawn's coming out nicely. We could always add a little bit of crosshatch the further out we go. Now, the further closer we are, I'm going to have a few of these blades be longer. I'll probably change the angle every now and then. Again, the human eye is funny. We tend to, the things that are closest to us, we see individual blades. We'll almost acknowledge them. We're not going to eliminate all the other blades. We're just going to see, we can't help but see larger. The further out we go, though, we'll see the mass. And that's a grouping, a total grouping. I think this is a great way of drawing lawns. It gives you the effect without eliminating too much. I love this effect. This technique of drawing grass is wonderful. It's a little bit more difficult, but it really works nicely. And I like that line I drew. It wasn't a complete line, it was a broken line. We'll do the same thing the further we go here. We'll break the line. It's not going to be a complete line, just a breakage. So we have grass going over the edge, and yet parts of that sidewalk are going to hold true. Do the same thing on this side. I think on this side, though, very little of the sidewalk is actually visible. So I'm just going to actually maintain that line strictly by the amount of grass we have. Looking at this picture, and we do have grass growing on the far side, so I'm going to keep that. I'm probably just going to work on this side of it here. I want to get the entire amount of lawn shown you here. It'll be nice for you to see. And again, this is smaller, it's manicured better. I think we did pretty good showing you a good inkling. I'm going to show you a little bit of the crosshatch effect too. The further out a lawn is, the darker it is for the eye to embrace. It's darker, it's further out. A lot of people would argue it's lighter as you go out because the sun hits it. Well, I think the further out it is, it's a little bit darker. So I'm going to show you a little bit about the crosshatch that goes involved there. It's not going to be a very overt crosshatch. It's going to be very subtle, and I might actually use a broken line. Remember what I said, I don't want to draw lines of grass. I want them all to interweave, interlock. So no one grouping, one group of grass is like a line on a parade. They're all interweaving. You can't tell where one begins and one ends. That is true, very good lawn work. Or for that matter, a head of hair. I always say that if you want to draw a good head of hair, draw someone with a butch haircut. You really don't see where it begins or ends. And that's why I look at, when I do a lawn, I think of a butch haircut. Except a butch haircut tends to be very manicured almost. A lawn, very wavy. Okay, here we go. I'm going to put a little bit of crosshatch in here. I'm going to break the rule so it's not a solid rule. I don't like using a solid rule when it comes to lawns or anything like that. And it's a nice effect. You can see what happens. It's a little bit darker. I use a horizontal line. I might later on, if I want it darker, put a 45-degree angle from one perspective and from another. I might not. It all depends what it looks like when I'm done. A lot of this should be done when everything else is completed. You should look at it and say, yeah, I think it'd be a good idea to make it a little bit darker. Don't do it to begin with, because you might be sorry. If you do it at the very start, you're going to have a hard time undoing it when you discover you got too much information. So by no means do it too quickly. Do it later on. Build it rather than unbuilding it. You can see what happened. Just a nice little darker foundation. I might actually at this point go with a solid line. I don't know. I might not altogether, but then again I might. No, I think I'll wait. I think I will wait. I'll take my own advice and wait. I like the idea of a broken rule anyway. And again, you could always use stipple. Stipple looks good with grass. I tell you the truth, the less information you put in to foliage, anything like that, the better off you are. So here we go. We'll try a little bit more till we run out of time in this segment. But I think I gave you a lot with grass. I think it's a good. In fact, what we'll do is we'll just draw more individual blades. It's a nice effect, and believe me, I don't share this effect with too many people. So it's kind of fun. Remember, double follicle. I think that is a good way out of a lot of situations like grass, hair. It's the way to do it. It works. And what I did there by having a broken rule for the sidewalk, take advantage of it. Stick in a blade of grass every now and then.